In at number 10, we have the Crystal Wyvern. And why would you say that this is such a strong creature? Well, I wouldn't say this is going to be the creature which is going to be like the most buff creature out there, but considering how easy this thing is to get, its strength is absolutely insane. So in terms of taming method to strength ratio, it has to be on this list. And yes, it is still a wyvern, so it is still going to pack a huge punch, and considering its tame method being one of the easiest in the game, it really does have to be put on this list, and no other creature can really fit the number 10 spot in my opinion. This just has everything which you could really need out of a wyvern, and especially with the blood crystal wyvern, you have yourself an even better version of the original creature which we all know and love. And this really is a creature which should be hugely celebrated across every Ark player's journey, and I really do think that everyone should tame one of these things at some point, as long as you do have Crystal Isles. And that shouldn't be too much of a stretch considering it is a free DLC map. And these things are just so good and so easy to tame with that passive taming method that they really cannot be discounted on this list. Again, because of their taming method being so easy. Even like a raptor tame is harder than this, and look at how much stronger this thing is than the raptor. Next up, we have the rock drake, and this creature really does pack a punch when it comes to all of that damage. This is an insane creature when it comes to any kind of damage. It really does pack a punch in the mobility department, of course, but also in the damage department as well. And considering its mobility, it really is something special which you can't celebrate with every Ark creature out there, as there are loads of really great strong tames that don't have great mobility, and that really should be counted. Obviously, in this list, they aren't going to be fully counted, as some of the creatures further along do not have great mobility, but they are definitely a lot stronger than that creature in terms of damage, apart from the creature in the number 1 slot, which you may think is a bit of a surprise, but I really think considering all of its abilities, it is 100% worthy of that spot, and no other creature is as strong in it in those scenarios, those certain scenarios, of course, which are actually a very fundamental part of the Ark game. But back to the rock drake, this thing also has a very nice and interesting taming method, albeit not the easiest, but I do like a good challenge when it comes to taming any kind of creature, as I feel a huge sense of achievement once I've tamed it. I don't just want the easiest tames. The Crystal Wyvern is obviously an exception. That thing is just absolute gold, and it really does seem like an absolute cheat to have one of those things, considering how easy they are to tame, and you know how like powerful they actually are. But yes, the rock drake is a bit of a difficult tame, but once you've got one of these things, especially on aberration, you're really not going to regret taming one. Next up, we have the Basilisk, and this really does have to be included on the list, and although its tame method is rubbish, and I really don't like this thing as a creature, and especially its tame method, that is the main rationale behind it, it is definitely still a very strong creature which is capable of huge amounts of damage. And if you do have the patience to tame one and the resources to gather it, which is rock drake eggs, wyvern eggs work as well, and you can use magmasaur eggs too. You'll probably be using rock drake eggs considering most people tame this thing on aberration. Then you're definitely going to enjoy this creature, as it has a wealth of abilities like going into the ground, dealing torpor with its second ability, but also just dealing loads and loads of damage with its bite. And this creature really is built to pack a punch when it comes to the damage department, so it obviously very much makes sense why this creature is on the list. In at number 7, we have the Thyla, and this creature is one of those creatures which you have to put on any strongest tames list. It really can't be discounted from this role. It has such a wealth of abilities, it is absolutely insane. Namely that this thing can climb trees, walls and vertical surfaces, all of that kind of jazz, you know. And also on top of that, which is a little bit sad in terms of ASA, it is actually really rubbish at traversing terrain now, because the terrain is so buggy, in its form that this thing just glitches everywhere. So maybe don't use this thing as much for all of that transport on ASA, as it really isn't doing too great at the moment, like some other creatures as well with that similar department. And we'll probably see that continuing on as other maps release and more creatures are added to the game, and then we'll see the true horror that is the ASA terrain system. But also, unlike many carnivores, this creature actually does have really great mobility and the bleed ability, which doesn't really make sense when you think about it, considering like it's literally ripping creatures apart with its teeth. But you know, this creature does deal the bleed ability, which is an insanely useful ability, which I personally think every carnivore should really have. But considering its use in Ark, it makes sense why everyone doesn't have it, because it is a very useful ability which only the most powerful of carnivores can really wield. And the creature in the number 1 spot has the bleed ability, of course, and you can't really put a creature which doesn't have the bleed ability in at the number 1 spot. But the Thyla is still definitely very deserving of the number 7 spot, because there are definitely some creatures out there, like the next one on the list, which are more powerful than it and do a better job than it, but it is still a really great tame of its day, considering how early this thing came out, and it still is a really great, strong tame to this day, and again, very deserving of this spot. Next up, we have the Shadowmane, and this creature is one of those tames which I have to put on the list for strongest tames. Its amount of abilities is absolutely insane, and it is tremendous how many great abilities this creature has, and it really can't be discounted. Namely, it has a really great mobility, although I shouldn't really talk about that considering it is a strongest tames list. But in terms of its damage, it does have that pack buff. I'm not sure if it has the bleed ability, but it can charge up its damage over time, which isn't actually a very long period. After it deals enough damage, it can charge up its attack and deal insane amounts of damage, and these are really great creatures to use for bosses. And if you wanted to, you could use them for the Moda. I've tried it once. It actually didn't go as bad as you may think, especially considering that hydration buff which they have. And they're really great swimmers as well, which definitely does play to their advantage in mobility. But in terms of damage, these things really do pack a punch and are great creatures for bosses if you just want to give them a shot. In at the number 5 spot, we have the Giga, and it really wouldn't be a strongest Ark Tames list without this creature being here. It is just one of those tames which has to be put on this list for obvious reasons. It is a big, hunking carnivore capable of so much stuff, and especially in the damage department. This is one of the highest damage dealing dinos in the game. Its base damage once tamed is absolutely insane, and when wild is even more insane, because these things do significantly debuff when tamed, which doesn't really make sense, but considering the time when it came out, it kind of had to be done, as then it would have been way too OP for this job. And now there are some other creatures which are definitely more powerful than it. That's why it's only in at the number 5 spot. But still, considering when it came out in its day, it is still really held up to the test of time. And it is a great creature for dealing insane amounts of damage. And it really does pack a punch. Its only real downsides being its rubbish stamina, and also its, not bleed ability, rage meter, which means it only really has a set amount of health, and leveling up its health isn't really going to do much, apart from obviously the percentage difference will change. Either way, its health is quite limited, as after a certain amount of health is gone, it will simply lose control. Next up, we have the Carcharodontosaurus, and this creature is pretty much the same thing as the Giga, although just with a few upgrades, and it is a newer creature. So what really do you expect from this thing? And it is definitely one of those creatures which I say has to be on the list of strongest Ark Tames, no matter who it's coming from, what type of player, or what creatures they use. Because I don't really use this creature that much, it is still a very strong Ark Tame, and obviously has to be on this list. Its main advantages over the Giga, and why it is higher than the Giga, is the fact that it doesn't have a rage meter, and its rage meter, not rage meter, I'm getting caught up on everything. It's like, oh, I can't remember what it's Blood Rage. Sorry, I'm getting caught up on all kinds of Ark abilities. Once that is full, it deals more damage than the Giga, and considering it's in combat for a lot of the time, that meter, I don't know why I was going to say beta there, is going to be really, really full most of the time when you're in heated combat. So you're going to be dealing insane amounts of damage, and with no rage meter, you have the whole spectrum of health the Carcharodontosaurus has. It's a really tough dinosaur name to say, and also on top of that as well, it does have great mobility, which I haven't really talked about, and I'm pretty sure it does attack a little bit faster than the Giga as well, allowing a little bit more DPS, as we could all do with just a little bit more of that. In at number 3, we have the Rhyniognatha, and this creature really is one to be highly respected by any Ark player, with no exceptions. And yes, this is one of the newer tames that has been added to Ark. The fact that it can pick up a Rex, which no other Ark creature can do, is an insane thing to have. And yes, cryopods exist, so you know you can quite easily transport creatures larger than a Rex. It still does really stand a point. And in terms of PvP at the moment, these things are being heavily used, and it was actually a very controversial position for wildcard to put these things into ASA from day one, especially considering they increased the spawn rate by a lot. And the reason for that is these creatures are so strong, and people just wanted a more kind of primitive version of Ark, which, you know, we kind of all do want to go back to someday, and we hope Ark 2 is that, but I'm not actually sure it will be, because it may just end up like the first one. And I know wildcard says no, that is not going to happen, but we don't actually really know, and wildcard is in a little bit of a weird state at the moment, considering snail game stuff. It's not in a great position. But if you do want to know to tame one of these things, get a pheromone gland from the male, tame yourself a Bronto. Bronto is definitely preferred. Get those resources, which were on screen. Then find yourself a female Rhyniognatha, trap it in some way. The net gun is preferred. Get out your spyglass, or you can obviously use a magnifying glass. Damage this creature as much as you can, and you may think you're taking it too far. Just do it as much as you can. Obviously, don't kill it. That would be a huge waste, but still, really get its health down while it's in that trap. And for your net gun, obviously, it's time limited, but you still got a whole minute to do it, so it really isn't that bad. And after that, you'll want to feed your pheromone gland to your creature, obviously before you've let the creature out of the trap, otherwise this stage may not work. Actually, it just won't, really. It won't do the thing it's supposed to. Then after that, this thing will come out of its trap and then impregnate your dino, where all of the hunger timers or craving timers, that's I think what they're called, will happen, where you'll need all those resources, only necessary to get 100% effectiveness. Then your dino will roll over, die, and you have yourself a baby Rhyniognatha. In at number 2 is the Reaper, and the Reaper really did. I don't know what I'm turning into. Do you know what milk duds are? Maybe I'm turning into one of those things. Either way, if you didn't know already, the Reaper is one of the most powerful and strong tames which you'll find in any Ark playthrough, and the tame method is pretty similar to the Rhyniognatha, so I won't go through it. But instead of your dino being impregnated and hunger timers not existing on this thing, you'll need XP to get 100% effectiveness. Yeah, there's no difference in the taming method at all, really. There just isn't one. They're pretty much just a rehashing, although obviously this creature did come first all the way back in 2017, so you know, I guess it is 6 years older than the Rhyniognatha, and I do realise it's been absolutely ages since Aberration came out. I remember when that map was new. Either way, in terms of this thing's abilities, it doesn't really have an ability apart from its insane damage, and I think its second attack deals torpor. It's also really great mobility and just overall great ergonomics as a creature, and wildcard really couldn't have designed this creature any better. It is just so good at its job in every way. If it was allowed into boss arenas, then bosses would be some of the easiest creatures in the game, so it really does deserve to be in this spot. And in at number 1 is the Deinonychus. And what really did you expect? Actually, you may have expected a very different creature to be in this list, but I think I have a very valid reason to put this thing in. Firstly, its taming method being one of the easiest in the game makes this one of the best creatures, if not the best creature, for strength to taming method difficulty ratio, whereas the Reaper is a very, very long and somewhat annoying process. Unless you're on Gen 2, then it is dead easy. And also the fact that this thing has a wealth of great abilities, namely its bleed ability, and the fact that it can inflict that on bosses as it is allowed into boss arenas, and it can inflict that bleed damage is insane, especially paired with its pack buff as well. You can have a group of these things going ham on any boss, and no creature will do better at that job. These are the best for it, unless you're on extinction, obviously. Then some other creatures are going to be in order. The Carcharodontosaurus and the Giga are definitely going to be needed for that, as albeit they are really, really powerful tames. The health can't quite rack up to some of the Titans, but it isn't going to be the bosses which you're facing in most cases. And for everything else, these things are going to do splendidly for everything, and the mobility is really great as well. So if you do get into any trouble in a fight, you can quickly dash away with nice parkour skills, which, you know, isn't quite as elegant as some other Ark creatures, but still extremely useful. So I do urge you, if you get the chance, really, really do tame one of these things. And in my opinion, they're the strongest Ark creatures. In at number 10, we have got the Rex, and I guess I should probably somewhat explain what I mean by natural creatures. And what I mean by natural is they fit into the environment very well, and they are very well suited to the Ark game as well. They're not overly OP and just mess with all of the game balance, and the Rex is kind of a perfect base level example for that. Everyone kind of knows what the Rex is, so it's obviously really going to fit into a dinosaur game, and it's not like Rhyniognatha level OP, so it's nothing game breaking, which, you know, I always like. And I know loads of people out there like the Rhyniognatha. I tend to rant on about it a lot, that it's way too OP, but that is just because I come from a more primitive day of Ark, and I kind of prefer the game being somewhat a little bit challenging when you don't really get that too much anymore. But either way, the Rex is going to be your go-to boss creature for pretty much any map, really. There isn't extinction, it can do it all, and you have the X Rexes on Gen 1 as well, so you can have an even better Rex. And if you're on ASA, they're an absolute cheat to tame, so I would recommend you get one. They're so easy with that baby mechanic. You just kill the parent, or if the parent's already been killed, you simply just press E on a baby Rex, and then boom, you have yourself a Rex. It's that simple. It's kind of actually a little bit sad how easy the game has become, but still, you know, a very nice creature that fits into a general dinosaur game theme, as it kind of is the world's most popular dinosaur. Next up, we've got the Crystal Wyvern, and this kind of just has to be here as it's on Crystal Isles and it's a Crystal Wyvern. Can you make the connection there? You probably can, can't you? It's literally like the theme of the map, the standout creature, if you will. And although it's a modded version of a previously very well-known creature, I personally think it adds a really nice new spin, and it makes sense, and it works for this creature, and I really like it for that. And I really do appreciate this creature, what it stands for, how you tame it, what it does. Especially with Blood Crystal Wyverns, really useful. They have the hydration buff for some reason as well. Don't really know why. The water one, I'm pretty sure the Blood Crystal Wyvern doesn't. But, you know, they're a fly, they can't even go into water. But, you know, it's the thought that counts, right? You can always dip your wings in there to get that hydration buff, or just dip your toes in if you're on the ground. And there's so many things that you can do with Crystal Wyverns that you couldn't do with normal Wyverns, because they're so much more accessible to the general Ark players due to that much easier taming method. And they just kind of bring a new essence of life to this creature, which we've kind of known it's pretty much been the same. But when these things came out, it was a really new spin on these creatures, which we probably didn't even think about when thinking about, oh, what's going to be next for the Wyvern. We probably didn't even think what was next for the Wyvern, and that's what makes this creature so special. Next up, we've got the Deinonychus, and this is a perfectly fit creature for those chalk hills. I was going to say crystal hills for a second. It's like chalk hills biome or something like that. Chalk cliffs biome, I'm pretty sure is what it's called actually. But yeah, this creature really fits into that map, and also it's a really, really great creature on top of that as well, which is why I've put it a little bit higher than something like the Crystal Wyvern, because I do prefer this creature a little bit, although maybe the theme isn't quite there as much, as it doesn't lean into it quite as much, as there's no like bits of chalk rock sticking out of this thing. I still really think it fits very nicely with the wrap, what am I talking about anymore? I'm rushing things at this point. Either way, it's pretty much like a really great substitute to the raptor, and you can't really even compare it to that creature because it is so much better. It has the pack buff, it doesn't take full damage. This thing can like parkour across the map, and it does bleed damage to bosses, and it just does a heck of a lot of damage. It has a lot of health, a lot of mobility, a lot of weight, and a lot of stamina. So maybe not the most amount of weights that you would carry loads of metal around with, but enough that you can very easily get by. It's not like a Pteranodon's weight, which is kind of outrageously low, but it kind of is deliberately so, because that would be a little bit too OP, and then the RG just wouldn't be a warranted creature. So that's how the game balances itself, and we seem to be lacking that again in New Ark. But this creature is still very balanced. It doesn't break the boundaries in really OP creatures. It does make a few bosses a little bit of a cheese, but I don't feel like it's too easy. In at number 7, we have got the Astrocetus, and this creature just fits so well with its space biome, I kind of have to put it here. And it was such a new, inventive, creative thing. I guess I'll put the Astrodelphis here as well, because they are pretty similar, but the Astrocetus just came first, and it's a really big space whale. It just seems a lot cooler to me. Kind of put the Void Worm here as well. That's a nice another spin on the Wyvern, because I was talking about the Crystal Wyvern earlier, and it really fits with the space theme and with the kind of theme of Gen 1. Yes, it kind of gets into more OP territory as you get into Gen 1 and Gen 2, especially with like the really new creatures that came out now. But like Gen 2's a 2021 thing, so it's getting on like, it'll be 3 years old in the summer, which kind of seems a little bit insane. It might have been 2022. I'm trying to work out my dates. Can you comment that down below, because I'm really not sure anymore. Next up, we got the Bloodstalker, and doesn't this just fit right in with the bog biome on Gen 1? Like, I wouldn't think of any other creature really being in this map. And of course you've got all your Spinos and your Baryonyx and your Sarcos and your Capros and your dreaded insects. I can't remember what they're called now, something, but insect swarms is pretty what they're called, aren't they? Yeah, you got those absolutely horrible things. But no, the Bloodstalker really does fit, again, like all those other creatures, but they were kind of already there apart from the insect swarms. But that's not going to get a mention really on this list for being a really good natural tame, because they are some of the most annoying things just in Ark. It's one of the reasons why I hate the bog biome, and you should probably just go live in the ocean biome instead. Even though it says hard, you can go on the island and it's easy living. With the Bloodstalker, you kind of turn into bog Spider-Man, I guess. Really terrible joke. Was that joke good? Was it bad? Comment that down below as well. Also, this thing is just such a great underwater tame. For me, it's my favourite underwater creature. Makes sense. Spawns in the bog biome. There's a lot of bog in the bog biome, which means there's some water in the bog biome. So it means it must be a good swimmer, right? And it is. And it's really good at just generally travelling around as well, which really does help this creature out. I love the Bloodstalker. In at number 5, we have got the Rock Drake, and doesn't this really just sit home in Aberration? And I would kind of say Crystal Isles as well. Kind of sad that they removed it when it got an official release, but I guess it might have been a little bit on the OP side to have Rock Drakes on some other maps as well. It means more people can get their hands on them, but I kind of did prefer it that way as well. But you know, they really do fit their original map, Aberration, and they're pretty much like the only real good method of travel on that map. Just no questions asked whatsoever. They are the creature you want, and there's no real replacement to them on Aberration, which really does solidify their place in being completely built into that map very well. And obviously they've got a really cool model design. Their abilities are cool and inventive. Pretty sure it was the first like Ark glider that you would ride on. I know the Archaeopteryx came before, but that doesn't really count because yeah, it just doesn't count. So I'm going to stop talking about that. But I'm pretty sure it kind of started the trend of gliders, and it really does just work with Aberration. If you've ever used a Rock Drake on Aberration, you know how fun these things are to use and how good these things are to use. And also, they have a lot of damage as well. Pretty good for bosses, and you can cheese Rockwell with this and some Lazarus Chowder if you ever want to do that, because that's actually kind of fun and nice and a little bit hilarious as well. So if you've never done that before, I would definitely recommend you go out there and do this at some point, because, you know, there are just so many things you can do with the Rock Drake, and choosing Rockwell should be one on your go-to tick-off list. Next up, we've got the RG, and I kind of just have to put this thing here as it just fits into the island so well, and I could not imagine the island without the RG. And I think of this creature with great nostalgia. Obviously, when I look at that old RG model, the new one is far better. I do not want the old one back, but, you know, there's always something about the old RG model which just, it really makes me realise how much I love this creature and just how well fitted it is to this map, and kind of any mountain biome you could say as well, because can you imagine just a mountain in Ark and then without RGs? No, because you're constantly on the lookout for RGs, just like, I want to avoid the RGs, or I'm going to go tame an RG. It's just such a crucial step of someone's playthrough on the island, and I'm kind of valuing the island over all other maps because it's the map that people start on, and it's the map that every single Ark player has access to, and every single Ark player does have access to an RG. So really, at some point, if you have never done it before, get yourself an RG. They are packed full of cool abilities, like their regen if they kill something and they eat it. They also have a smithy for their saddle, so you can really just like repair anything that you'll need in terms of flat related stuff, or metal gear if you're out on a metal run, or doing any caving, because you might want to repair your armor, because arthropleuras are really annoying and they'll break your armor, and this will help out so much. So really do tame yourself an RG, and it also, if you want metal and you like metal, the RG is going to be perfect for you. It's got weight reduction on things like metal, crystal and obsidian. In at number 3, we have got the Desmodus, and it really does just fit the Nordic theme of Fjorda, doesn't it? And also it's really a great creature, and it's borderline too OP, but it works. It can't pick up Rexes or anything stupid like that, like the Rhyniognatha. It can farm blood bags and make Sanguine Elixir, and it's like when you got the Valentine's Day event anyway, you kind of have something similar to that, but now you just have it all the time. And I actually really do like it, and it is so good for official players, because that can be a little bit grueling sometimes to tame something, and you know, it kind of takes the edge off of it. For single player, it doesn't really matter as much, but you know, it makes it a little bit more fun and more appealing. These things also do have night vision, but because I was in the Wasteland biome in Extinction, nighttime never happens, so I could not show you them going invisible nighttime. I'm pretty sure they have like a night vision thingy as well. They might not, they might. I might have said that wrong, but either way, they can go invisible in the nighttime, and I didn't show it because there's no nighttime here. I should have probably just gone to one of the domes, really. At number 2, we have got the Shadowmane, and this creature, man, it just, when I think of Gen 2, I think of the Shadowmane. It's so rooted in its map, it's kind of insane. And when thinking of Rockwell's Garden, you think of this creature, and I guess I'll chuck the Noglin in here as well, and maybe even the Bulldog and other creatures like that, because they are so fitted to like the maps like Aberration and Gen 2. You really just can't imagine the maps without them, and the Noglin is a better example than the Bulldog, because the Bulldog's an Aberration, and you can't think of Rockwell's Innards without the Noglin. It's just a mind-controlling like little critter, you could say, and it fits perfectly. And so does the Shadowmane for Rockwell's Garden. You could consider Maywing a little bit as well, although I think it doesn't quite fit in as well as these creatures, because I don't really know. I don't really have a valid answer to back that up, but I really think these do. And Shadowmane and Noglin are just packed full of really cool, fun abilities. And Shadowmane is a really great boss creature, so if you're thinking of doing Rockwell on that map, probably do it with Shadowmanes, because it will feel authentic enough and it will be fun. And in at number 1, we have got the Reaper, and the Reaper kind of just had to be here, didn't it? When you think of the Reaper, you really do think of Aberration. It's so perfectly suited to its map. It's actually a little bit crazy to think about, at least for me, because it's so rooted in its map and it fits perfectly. Like, there's no issues whatsoever with this creature fitting into its map. It's just, it is like A+ gold star, 5 out of 5, boom, it has done it. It is the most like natural creature to a map. Coming back to that title, that's kind of the context of meaning that I meant. It's the most kind of natural feeling creature. And also it's a really cool inventive one as well. It's tame method, it gets you impregnated and then you get loads of XP to get 100% effectiveness, of course, not necessary. And then once it's actually been born, then you need the pheromones so it won't kill you, which is that's another kind of cool feature, but you know, it is a little bit frustrating sometimes. But once you have one, you literally feel like a god, and it makes sense. Like, the progression of getting one of these things on aberration is insane. In Gen 2, it's a little bit overthrown because they're so easy to tame, but I can admit the R Reaper is really a good one as well. You should be getting an R Reaper if you can over the original, but I'd recommend taming it on aberration first, because on Gen 2 it kind of spoils the fun just a little bit. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I really hope that you all enjoyed, as I really did enjoy making this one. And as always, comment down below what is the most natural creature to you. If you didn't agree with this list, comment down below your top 10 natural art creatures, and I'll see you all later.